Welcome back to MPL Weekly. I'm Becca Scott here with Cedric Phillips and Brad Nelson. Welcome.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
It's so great to have you here. A real-life MPL member at the desk in the flesh.
I like any excuse to dress up and talk Magic, so I'm happy to be here.
Ooh, all right, all about that.
I think that second part is true. Is that first part true?
Not at all.
I didn't think so.
I was going to say, I believed you. I thought it was very genuine, and I was like, wow, you're one of the few MPL players that loves to wear a sports coat.
No, it is hot in here.
That's because he's in here.
Oh.
Hey, okay, so Brad, you are, of course, an incredible player of this deck because you were helping me to play it right before we started the stream here. Thank you. Please don't shame me at all.
Of course I wouldn't do that.
Thank you, thank you. So I piloted it beautifully with your assistance, but your best friend and housemate, Brian Braun-Duin, is in the match we're about to watch, and he's one of the few people who didn't bring Kethis. Did you foresee that outcome?
I did, and it might be a mistake, but I think that he built the deck really well or tuned it. He's been playing Esper Hero forever. I can't buy a win with this deck at all after Core Set came out, but I like the way it's built, and it's just his deck. I've been watching him play it for months now, and he just wins these unbelievably difficult games that I could never have found a path to win. So this is just where he's comfortable. He didn't really feel comfortable in the Kethis mirrors or just didn't want to show up with it. I don't exactly know. I stayed out of it because I did not want to get spoiled. Also, he didn't let me know anything either. But I'm excited, and it's just awesome to see him play 4 Ashiok's in the main deck. That's wild card.
Absolutely. Well, he had to, anticipating all these Kethis decks. Now, we do have the brackets. We can take a look at where we are in today's tournament. So upper finals are done. Matt Nass moving on to the grand finals, and we're about to watch the match of the lower semifinals there between Ken Yukuhiro and Brian Braun-Duin. And Lee moved on to those lower finals there. Here's our head-to-head with Ken and Brian. Both been playing for quite a while with an excellent record as well. That might be an incorrect round-robin record. I think they were 4-3 because they got in, I think it was down to Brian and Javier Dominguez on tiebreakers there.
Yep. Brian making it through, which is obviously pretty fortunate for him, but mixing it up with what he's brought to the table here with Esper. I know we're going to get to his deck list in a little bit here, but I can't say it's too surprising to see him kind of pick this deck and play it.
He plays it well.
It's Brian's wheelhouse. It's definitely that. And I know that, obviously you getting second place at the Mythic Championship in Vegas a little bit earlier, and Brian and you, Brian and Kai, working on that. I hope these Ashiok's are good. I don't know if they are, but I hope they are.
I think they're good.
They are good. So in the mirror, it's a good stopgap to just, if the opponent gets too big of a graveyard, it's able to just eat it all. But this is an interactive matchup. This is a matchup where Brian has a lot of pieces that are trying to interact with the combo, so an Ashiok should do better in those because it's trying to prolong the game. But since in a Kethis mirror, you're seeing both decks trying to do their own thing often, which means that even an Ashiok activation is not going to do anything. We're going to see Tyrant Scorns being held up to interact mid to break up those combo turns. That's really what Brian's going to be doing. That's why I think these Ashiok's are going to really excel here. And all you're trying to do is slow the game down because Brian's deck does have its own combo, with Bolas' Citadel just churning through the entire deck and then eventually making a bunch of hero tokens and just being able to dome. So don't ever think this deck is out of it. I've seen some wild turns from Brian's streams.
Fair enough.
Absolutely. All right, now the way that it works in this core split of MPL Weekly is that the MPL players in this division will play 7 rounds of round robin. So we do have a piece from Rich Hagan of Ken Yukuhiro going through his round robin matches. Let's see that now.
Rich Hagan here with the Sapphire story of Ken Yukuhiro. Yukuhiro won his opener against Brian Braun-Duin with board states like this, and this, and this. So clearly he's 4-color Planeswalker mid-range. Yeah, no. Yukuhiro lost the decider in the 4-color Planeswalker mid-range mirror against Matt Nass before pulling ahead again when his Kethis combo deck actually looked like a Kethis combo deck against Li Shi-Chan. World champion Javier Dominguez was up next. He was also playing Kethis, and the death knell for Death Snow came via Jace, Wielder of Mysteries. Speaking personally, I think it's really nice that Jace is finally getting a moment to shine. Up next was Savich, playing a very different kind of combo. Here's one we call Knight of the Ebon Legion plus 3 mana equals 4 damage and a +1/+1 counter. Combo! Knight became Knight, became very big Knight. Savich was in control, but that was as good as it got for Savich, who would eventually end the split winless with his Vampires list. There's Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, hanging out as the last card of Yukuhiro's deck, getting ready to claim the game. Yukihiro took care of game 2, and for a third time was ahead of the game at 3-2. Yukuhiro also took game 1 against John Rolfe and his Esper control deck when he milled Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, into his graveyard via Diligent Excavator and cast it from there thanks to Kethis the Hidden Hand. This is a combo deck in action, my friends. Yukuhiro didn't have it all his own way though. Here's Tail's End taking out Teferi Time Raveler, and here's Vraska showing her contempt for Kethis Hidden Hand. 1-1. Yukuhiro looked ahead in the decider, but Esper Control lets you play with Kaya's Wrath, which swung things back to Rolfe, and it also gives you Command the Dreadhorde, which can be very rude. Rolfe accumulated Planeswalkers aplenty, another Kaya's Wrath was desperately needed. Yukuhiro was pegged back yet again to 3-3. So, in Game 3 of his critical match against Shahar Shenhar, Legion's End came in handy for Yukuhiro, taking down 2 Spectral Sailors. A curiously obsessive Siren Stormtamer threatened for Shenhar, but with Kethis in play, Yukihiro's board continued to grow, and Vraska proved the final straw. With that, at 4-3, Ken Yukihiro was through to the playoffs.
そうですね。なんで僕が決出デッキなんで選んだかっていうと、この予選の仕組み的に7回戦戦うってことで、実際いろんな人と戦うことが想定されるんで、単純にその一番いい、現状の今のスタンダードの中で一番いいと思う選択肢を選びました。で、その中で、なんかその自分なりの工夫がある決出デッキにしました、今回は。はい。決出デッキのいいところは、まず、コンボが非常に強力で、一度始まったらもうそのまま勝ちにつながるっていうところは明確にいいところで、スタンダードっていうフォーマットにおいては珍しいコンボデッキっていう枠組みのデッキなんで、そこはまず素晴らしい、明確にいい点なんですけど、それとは別に、そのコンボに依存せずに、プレインズオーカーだったり、でアドバンテージを取って多角的にそのコンボだけじゃなくていろんな角度から相手をそのじわじわ追いやるっていうことで、単純にその芯が強い、もうコンボをその墓地対策されただけで負けるようなそのやわなコンボじゃないっていうところが奇跡のすごい素晴らしいところですね。そうですね。前回は週ごとに試合していって、積み重ねの勝利だったんで、結構そのなんだろうな、自信とか安定感とかっていうのが結構あったと個人的には思っているので、だから今回は結構そのぶっつけ本番というか、結構1回かけるトーナメントなんで、その自信とかは今回は特にないんですけど、それでもやっぱこのチャンスをつかみ取れたので、精一杯もう自分なりの、オリジナリティをアイデンティティを生かして戦えたらいいかなと思ってます。はい。
All right, there's Ken Yukihiro. I think it's interesting that he's known for sort of putting his own spin on a pretty popular meta deck list, but this time it looks like just Jace is what's a little different from his list.
Oh, there's a lot different about his list. One of them is there's no Oath of Kaya, which is a card that I've seen 4 of in each copy. It's been trimmed because this is a very metagamed anti-Kethis division right now. But there's Teferi Hero of Dominaria. This is a matchup where both decks have that card, and I didn't even think even a single copy was going to be registered for this top 4.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so Big T made it in his list.
Yep.
But Oath might be powerful in this matchup, yeah, or not so much?
Oath is a very good card against Hero of Precinct 1 because when that gets out of control, that's really the win condition. Like, especially with a deck that, yes, there are these 1/3s and 3/4s that are going to be holding the fort, but when BBD gets an opportunity to dispatch enough of them, enough damage can get across. And And like I said, one of the big finishes for Brian is going to be Bolas' Citadel. So as long as Brian can get the opponent down to 10 life or less, that can get activated with a hero in play. So an Oath of Kaya can keep that from happening and get that big board position protecting Brian's Planeswalkers. But this is going to be an interesting one, and I don't have a clue because I have never seen a Kethis combo deck also have Teferi
Hero
of Dominaria.
Interesting. All right. Well, we do have a piece from Maria Bertoldi going through how BBD made his way to the top 4 in this week's round robin.
What's up, Magic fans? Marie here to give you the rundown on Brian Braun-Duin's trip to the top 4 of the Sapphire division this week in the MPL. As I'm sure you know by now, he's the 4th person in our top 4 who played Kethis this week, which some might call a nightmare scenario, but if you're running Ashiok, I guess that's actually a good thing. BBD's start to the week was rough. He was actually up against the 3 other players in today's top 4 and lost to them each, one right after the other. First up was his loss to Combo King Matt Nass, who pilots the Kethis deck as masterfully as he pulls on his basketball shorts each morning. BBD does manage to make it to game 3, but didn't survive much longer than turn 3 as Matt is able to combo off the very next time he untaps. It was more bad news for BBD as he racked up losses against Ken Yukuhiro and Li Shitian, making his start 3 straight Kethis mirrors and 3 straight losses. Ouch. Brian needs to win out to make it into the top 4, and even then there could be a scrum on tiebreakers, so this is the point in the week where he needs to dig deep and find the fire. First into the ring is world champion Javier Dominguez in another mirror where game 2 is epic. BBD casts Vraska early on to kill Javier's Kethis and leave his own alive, but it's the same play next turn from Javier. Fortunately, BBD had a backup Kethis in hand this entire time, as well as an Ashiok, which immediately gets to work weaving a nightmare for Javier. But wait, Yawgmoth's Vile Offering from Javier looks pretty brutal here, killing Brian's Kethis and stealing it for himself. But little Teferi earns his spot in the deck, bouncing BBD's own Kethis back to his hand the following turn. Fast forward a few light years and the match ends as Brian manages to find the Elder Spell from out of the board, ultimating Vraska for the match win. Next up is his match against 2-time world champ Shahar Shenhar on Mono Blue Tempo. And even though it seems like Brian could be up against the ropes against this fast and tricky deck, check out how he's able to turn the game back around in his favor after falling to 7 life. Here he strings together a couple of Oath of Kayas to kill off a lethal Tempest Djinn, finds a very important lost homunculus, and constructs a win with all 4 copies of Diligent Excavator in play. That's 2 down, 2 to go. Up next is Savich on Vampires. Tied at 1 game apiece going into game 3, Savich is off to a blazing start, but a pair of discount Oath of Kaya's clean house for our hero. Things start to look pretty bad once again here as BBD faces down an impressive army with just a little Teferi and a Kethis at the ready. Eventually, with the help of Vraska and an insane draw of Yawgmoth's Vile Offering, that's game. Brian takes the match inches from death himself. So if Brian can win this one against John Rolfe, he's putting himself in position to make the top 4. John's running Esper Control, Brian takes game 1. Fast forward to game 2, and I'll just point out this insane board state here where it seems like there is no way in the Theros underworld that Brian could construct a win, except for that Elder Spell in hand, which ends up being his key to victory. And he's done it! Brian Braun-Duin squeaks his way into the top 4, despite starting out 0-3, proving you don't always have to feel blue, even when you're in the Sapphire division.
I decided to play Kethis because I thought it was just the best deck in Standard. Actually, I feel like it's favored against basically every other deck in Standard. The only reason it's not super dominant is that it loses to itself a good bit. I thought it was going to be 4 Kethis players who made the top 4. So then it's like, well, what do you do? Like, are people going to still play Kethis? Are they going to try to beat Kethis? Or, you know, what are other people going to do? So right now I'm kind of leaning towards falling back on Esper Hero, one of my favorite decks, and trying to tune it to be good against Kethis. And crossing my fingers with that. Ken is a question mark to me. I don't know what deck he's going to bring. I could easily see Ken coming with a unique deck that attacks Kethis from a different angle. Kind of what I'm trying to do myself. So with him being my first match, it's very possible that we're both playing anti-Kethis decks against each other, and neither of us are playing Kethis. being in the lower bracket actually significantly affects my choice because I'm going to have to beat all 3 other opponents over the course of the top 4 if I'm going to win this thing. So for me, that means I have to eliminate any deck that's like a glass cannon. Any deck that's like can only beat Kethis and nothing else. I can't play that deck because if one of the other 3 people doesn't register Kethis, then I don't have a chance. So that's kind of why I'm leaning towards a deck like Esper Hero, because I know that Hero at least has game against everything. Maybe it's not great, but at least has game, and I know that I'll be able to play a match. And if I can build it to beat Kethis, then maybe I'll be favored there and have a chance elsewhere. I might be on the lower bracket going into tomorrow, but I am on the upswing because I started 0-3 and I won my last 4 matches. So, I got the momentum going into it, so maybe that'll be good enough.
Excellent. Brian perfectly laid out why he chose to bring the deck that he chose. So that was really interesting to hear. Now, he didn't do as well in his mirror matches, so that also makes sense to bring something else. You were telling me, Brad, that when you're on the draw, it's especially difficult in the mirror?
Well, I haven't been playing a ton of mirrors, but that's what Brian told me.
Okay.
It might have been his excuse for saying why he lost so many Kethis mirrors, but he said he did lose the die roll, and all 3 of his first matches against all 3 of the other competitors in this top 4 bracket, they never broke serve against each other. So whoever was on the play won that game. And you can see why that plays out. We saw it in the first match where there's just being able to that turn 3, right, when you're able to deploy something, it just feels like the person on the draw is just playing catch up. And if the player who started and had initiative has something to deploy each turn, it's really hard to answer because it's not an easy mirror to interact with as all these pieces are coming into play, and especially when you can just play something so fast on like turn 5 and just combo off with all of your combo pieces.
Awesome. All right, well, we'll get into it soon, but quick, I want to ask you a little bit of a sidebar question because you won your division in our last split, and so since we have you here, we might as well ask you our favorite question. What does this mean to win these grand finals and move to day 2 of the next Mythic Championship?
I mean, it was the first time, and it meant so much to me. I was under so much pressure, and I was at home, right? It doesn't feel like I should be stressed about Magic matches at home. You know, I'm not at a tournament site, and I'm not like surrounded by the commentary and all the other competitors. I'm just sitting in a room by myself, and I'm freaking out. But winning it meant everything to me. I mean, I was so excited. But the funny thing is I didn't celebrate for about an hour because BBD's match was being played as well.
Aww.
And so I played mine, I won mine, Brian went downstairs, he played his, and then we were in the backyard just jumping around excited for about an hour. But, I mean, he's going for a repeat, and so is Ken, so that's really exciting.
Absolutely, yeah, lots of division winners. All right, well, we do have Ken's deck list, so we can talk about the differences here without those other Kayas.
So taking a look at Ken's deck list, we've already seen Matt Nass playing this deck along with Lacey Chan. So you're going to find 3 copies of Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, where we didn't see that in the other players' deck list. The main deck copy of Jace. He's got 3 main copies of Tamio, where we've seen other players have 4. Some 4s aren't going to surprise you, like Kethis and Thibblethip and Mox and Diligent Excavator, of course. But there's also 4 main deck copies of Ashiok here, Brad, which is smart when you're expecting to play against the Kethis mirror, but it's probably not so great against Brian, right?
Yeah, we'll find all of Ken's tech in the sideboard as we see. That's not going to be a great main deck card, but look at those Veil of Summers. Now, this is exactly what Brian does not want to see coming after sideboard games, and now that can be beat by a Teferi Time Raveler in play, but that's going to make these like early thought erasures and removal spells potentially just backbreaking, just having this interactive spell for a match like this. So Ken definitely thought that Brian had Hero on the radar.
Well, it looks like he is right, unsurprisingly, because this is what Brian likes to do. There was a lot of chit-chat about him maybe bringing this deck, and, it's good against everything. Look, Brian, you don't have to try to sell us. You're just going to do this, and that's fine, because it's worked so well for him over the course of 2019. A ton of Teferis, main deck Ashioks, Heroes, which I think is going to probably be integral in this matchup, right? You got to start things off with Hero to get the ball rolling and then play all of your spells and interact that way. Is that probably the best way to go about trying to win this matchup?
Well, that is definitely a way to win those early games. And now, ever since Core Set 2020 came out, it's been way more difficult for an Esper Hero deck to just win these like draw-go games where your opponent gets attritioned out, because Kethis combo just has a million ways to gain value. Same with all of the scape shift strategies. But those Bolus Citadels, like I say, if Brian's gonna find his way to beat all three opponents today, we're going to see some crazy Bolus Citadel turns. Those are the big cards we're looking for in matchups like this.
And Bolus kind of replaced what a lot of people were using that spot for Command the Dreadhorde previously, is that right?
Yeah, Command the Dreadhorde is a very good card in an Esper mirror, because there's just a lot of interactions and then those big explosive turns where a lot of things happen. But Bolus Citadel is the kind of card that you're going to want in a deck that has cards like Elite Guard Mage and Teferis and sometimes Narsets, just to be able to reset the top of your library and just keep churning through it. This is a much better card in a matchup like this, because you can command and put a bunch of cards into play, but your opponent could still win next turn very easily.
And Ashiok could get in the way of there being a graveyard.
Exactly,
Interesting. All right. Well, we do have this match ready between Brian Braun-Duin and Ken Yukuhiro.
All right, we will take a look at BBD's opening hand here. It looks like a couple of copies of Oath of Kaya, a Hero of Precinct 1, a Thought Eraser, and an Ashiok. Going to start things probably off with a Glacial Fortress. Seems like a good enough keep, right here, Brad?
Yeah, it's a little awkward because Brian's definitely going to want to find lands, but having 2/2-drops is going to be really nice and gives him an option of whether he wants to go for the hand or deploy a threat.
Fabletip's going to draw Ken a card. He'll pass the turn back. Ken's hand is pretty stocked up here with multiple copies of Ashiok, which again aren't great in this matchup. He's also got a Teferi Time Raveler and a Mox, and let's make it a big Teferi as well. So Ken's deck is weirdly splitting the difference of being good against the mirror, but also being pretty good against Brian because he's got some interactive elements. Mox Amber's going to come down. Here's Teferi Time Raveler. He's going to play that. I imagine bouncing the Hero of Precinct 1, but we'll see what Ken wants to do here in just a moment. And away goes the Hero. And it looks to be a pretty good start here for Ken, Brad.
Yeah, this is a great start. Now, if Brian doesn't draw land, that means he's not going to play a third land drop. But if he doesn't deploy that Thought Erasure, that is a turn for Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, out of the Kethis combo deck. You don't even need a combo. You can just start drawing a bunch of cards.
Yeah. Fabletip's going to come in here for 1. Brian's going to fall down to 19. Watery Grave is the draw for the turn. So does Brian want to redeploy the Hero, or does he want to cast a Thought Eraser? Because you mentioned a very good point of, if you do Thought Eraser on this turn, you get the Teferi, but if you play the Hero, you don't. Teferi will come down. It might tuck away the Hero of Precinct 1, and then there's a 2-0 Planeswalker advantage, and that might just be too much for Brian to come back from right away.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. I won't even see a tuck happening from Ken, as that opens up the door for an Oath of Kai. It's going to be very difficult for Brian to interact with that Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. But what are you supposed to do? You want to play your cards in a relatively decent order, and deploying one of those 2-drops means you're not going to be able to double spell on turn 4 if you find that land.
This is just kind of showing you the power of Mox Amber in this Kethis combo deck too, accelerating him from, and this is Ken of course, from 2 to 4 mana, which means 5 mana on the next turn, something you probably wouldn't expect from most 4-color decks in Standard. It looks like Brian's going to deploy the Hero of Precinct 1, Watery Grave's going to enter the battlefield tapped, and now I think Brian's going to be in a world of trouble because we'll probably see 5 mana Teferi this turn after Little T moves up to 2 loyalty counters.
Yeah, this is going to be tough for Brian to deal with, but if the lands start coming and starts getting decent interaction, those tokens will start getting there. So that is nice. That is going to stop the card advantage engine for Ken, as there is an Oath in hand.
Yeah, so we're going to see Oath of Kaya come down here. I imagine it's going to take care of 5 minutes of Fairy. You can't let that thing get rolling, and I think a few people know that better than Brian, so he'll take care of the 5-mana Planeswalker. If you're Brian in this spot, because you have so much history of playing Esper strategies like this, just like Brian does, how are you feeling about this game, taking a look at your hand and seeing another Oath, Teferis, Ashioks, and all that good stuff?
Well, he does have a decent amount of spells. He's mostly worried about what is in Ken's hand. So if Ken is using 3 mana to play an Ashiok, that's a good thing for Brian, because Ashiok is not technically going to win the game. Now, Ashiok will be able to fill that graveyard, but as you see Brian's hand, he'll be able to exile that as well. So I like this. That makes a lot of sense. Ken is going to be exiling Brian's library, not even trying to fill a big graveyard up right now.
It's also notable, too, because now that Hero of Precinct 1 has been milled over, Bolas's Citadel is the draw for the turn. Not exactly what Brian is looking for here. So Brian's looking at an Ashiok on 4 loyalty, a Teferi on 3. This Oath of Kaya can just take care of that Teferi on 3 if Brian so chooses, and that's exactly what he will choose. So taking care of the 3-mana Teferi, though Brian doesn't know that Ken has another one in hand. It is worth noting, though, that this 3-mana Teferi that Ken does have, that's really the only thing that he does have at this stage of things. A backup Ashiok's not particularly good. The lands don't matter that much, and Brian's got a lot of life to work with at 22, so he's got some time to draw out of this, right, Brad?
He does, and especially because those Ash checks are going to keep from a graveyard filling for the combo. But Ken could just cycle through that Teferi bouncing Fiddle Flip and drawing 2 cards for the turn and trying to find, more substance in his hand, like Tamiyo's or Kethis.
That's when things start to really get out of control for this deck. So here's 3 mana Teferi. We'll see what's going to bounce. Well, you called it. You said Fibblethip will be the target, and Fibblethip is the target. So now the powerful Homunculus will be redeployed here momentarily, which will mean that Ken's going to draw another card and actually try to find some action, but he hasn't found any. He's found another copy of Ashiok and now a Temple Garden. So Brian doesn't know Ken's hand, but we sure do, and so do you guys at home. And what this means is that Ken doesn't really have much going on. So if you're Brian, you've still got time to get out of this, even though your deck is being milled 4 cards at a time.
Oh, for sure. I mean, he also has a lot of the cards that he's going to need to have that. So all he needs is lands now. As long as all 4 heroes aren't removed from the game, he will have a win condition that works with Bolsa Citadel plus a bunch of soldier tokens. But this is a tough turn because what are you supposed to do with your mana? You can play a Teferi, you can Thought Erasure, but Ken's not really doing much with his mana already, so maybe you just don't need to. Maybe you have to assume that the hand is weak.
I mean, perhaps there's a reason to play Ashiok this turn. Your Teferi's not doing all that much. He did find land number 4 in Isolated Chapel, so that's step 1 of many for Brian getting to 5 mana Teferi, and of course the very powerful 6 mana Bolas' Citadel. So Brian's going to take a moment or two to figure out what he's supposed to do on this turn. I think there's an argument for a lot of different plays. I do want to note that Thought Eraser, of course, can target Ken, take a card, but I don't think Brian would want to Surveil to the top because of the Ashiok that's on the battlefield. So it'll be 3 mana Teferi. It's going to plus up to 5 loyalty counters and just passing the turn, and Ken has drawn, Brad, another land.
I'm liking this. I don't.
No bias, right? No bias on your side. No,
wait,
none.
I didn't see that in any of the paperwork. I thought I could be biased here, and I'm definitely like this because Brian started off with not a lot of lands, but this happens when you flood and you draw the cards that aren't good in the matchup. You just fall apart really quickly, and it sucks for Ken to not have drawn any of the 4-ofs that are namesakes for the matchup besides a Teferi.
There is land number 5 here for BBD, so Drowned Catacomb is the draw. Now Brian, because he is so very skilled at this game, it would be so easy for him to play that 5th land, deploy 5 mana Teferi, and say, all right, I'm back in this thing. But he's going to take a little bit of time to think through his turn. Doesn't want to do anything too quickly here, because though the 5th land is important, it may not be the play he wants to make. It looks like he's thinking about going towards Thought Eraser and clearing a path, which might come as a little bit surprising, right? Because if Ken had something to do, he probably would have done it by now, right?
That's true, and so I do like an upkeep Thought Erasure if that is a plan.
Okay.
The way that I would play this turn is I would play potentially an Ashiok. Oh, actually no, this is just much better than mine. This Teferi is going to go up, and this is going to allow Brian to have an opportunity at finding that 6th land and also getting a chance to look at Ken's hand during the draw step.
Sure. So he gets the best of both worlds. He gets to deploy 5 mana Teferi, draw a card, draw step, cast a Thought Eraser so long as he has the stop set, which should actually be pretty nice because it looks like Ken drew a copy of Kethis. So I'm not sure if Brian has plans on firing off this Thought Eraser just yet or not.
It does not.
Well, I guess he can't, but he can't because another Teferi on the battlefield.
That is very true.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, no, I wasn't thinking about that. I haven't played in a couple days. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Well, there are the Teferi wars out there. So what's interesting is there's also the potential that Brian thought he could do that. Brian maybe thought he was getting the best of both worlds by being able to play 5 mana Teferi and play Thought Eraser. Now, it is worth noting that had Brian fired off the Thought Eraser, he would have missed because Kethis was the draw step. So there's really nothing Brian could have done about this. So if that was his plan, which was 5 mana Teferi plus Thought Eraser in the draw step, it wouldn't have worked. Even if it did work, it would have been good if it did work, but it didn't. So no harm, no foul. Kethis is on the battlefield. Here comes Ashiok, and I don't know if this is a game ender because there's no Diligent Excavator out here just yet, but it feels like Brian's in trouble.
Yeah, it's not a game ender, but what can happen is Ken can just get a lot of good permanents onto the board.
Okay.
So we could see a Tamiyo, we could see Teferi, there is another Mox. So this turn could still get a little crazy here.
So it looks like Ken's going to activate Kethis. He's going to exile 2 legendary cards from the graveyard. Now until end of turn, Each legendary card in his graveyard gains, you may play that card from your graveyard. So away we go. Here comes a Mox. The other Mox is going to go away. How much can Ken add to his battlefield right now? Because he's drawn a lot of the poorer cards in the matchup. But one thing that Ashiok does do a nice job of is fill up the graveyard. So another Ashiok is going to be deployed here by Ken. He'll mill himself 4 cards and, of course, exile Brian's graveyard, which no longer exists. And now Ken's going to see if he can keep moving forward here. Brian is really hoping to get another draw step. That is for sure.
Yeah, and like I said, these explosive Bowls of Citadel turns can exist with Elite Guard Mage in the deck, with Teferi Time Raveler activations. You can have giant explosive turns. I've seen Brian come back from the brink of death with this card, so you never can count Esper Hero out with a Bowls of Citadel in play.
Well, it's asking a lot right now because Ken's got a handful of Mox Ambers that he has access to, so he's going to play not 1, not 2, but it looks like 3 of the powerful legendary artifact, which finally has gotten its time to shine here in Standard before it does rotate a little bit later this year. Maybe another Ashiok is going to be deployed. It's going to be Tamiyo first. The Collector of Tales will now join the fray. We'll see how Ken wants to use this, but it's looking like Brian may not get another turn here, Brad, because things are going real well for Ken.
Yeah, this is full combo now. We've got multiple Moxes, we've got every single piece in play, and even the Jace is available. So it is going to be tough for Brian to get another turn.
Are we looking at just the full loop here because Ken does have access to, I believe, all 4 Moxes between what's on the battlefield and in the graveyard?
Yeah,
Does that more or less get you there?
Even at 2 Moxes and 2 Teferis, you're able to mill your entire deck, and then you can exile 2 legendaries for the last Jace turn.
Gotcha. So it appears to be only a matter of time here, folks, before Brian is going to be decked, or I suppose there's no real Oath of Kai's running around here, so it could be just a J skill, but either way, I think Ken's going to just be looping away. Don't know if Brian has any plans on conceding the game, but Ken kind of showed why this deck is so powerful. He had nothing going on, right? He had literally nothing going on. He drew too many copies of Ashiok, which aren't good in game number 1. Wasn't really doing much of anything. He had a Teferi, he had an Ashiok, he had a Fibblethip. He drew Kethis, and now look where we are.
I mean, I don't like it.
Look where we are from such a low base. It's wild to think about that this deck can actually do this from, oh, I drew Kethis, I guess the game ends now.
Yeah, it can go up from just such a low base, or even just all the combo pieces in hand, and that's what makes these decks so powerful, because you have to bring in all of this interaction. But because of how Teferi Time Raveler works, and even I missed it in this game, you don't play interaction on your opponent's turn. So these turns you just kind of get to do what you want.
Yep. Yeah, you are. There's nothing to worry about. There's no counterspell. There's no instant speed anything because you've got the Teferi Time Raveler wall up. So Ken is free to do whatever Ken wants to do, and he's going to start by playing another Ashiok and milling himself even more. He's got a lot of cards in the graveyard here, so he's probably going to mill his entire deck and try to get the win here with the Jace. Kethis is just so powerful, exiling 2 legendary cards from your graveyard and giving you access to your entire graveyard once again, and there's plenty of legendaries to do it down there with. Excavator milling yourself. What's kind of crazy to me, Brad, is we're deep into an 8-set standard format, and this is the kind of deck that you can find that I mean, who saw this coming? You know, we were talking about vampires and Scapeshift, and I know that you had a really good Fandom Legend tournaments with Scapeshift, and, you know, players were smashing with vampires, and, you know, you did a great write-up on, like, what the best decks are in the format. Now, all of a sudden, this thing shows up?
Well, I just love what Strowski and his team are doing. They've been building and designing decks for the last year now. Ever since we've seen the launch of Arena, they've just been on top of it. And I was blown away the first time I saw that. I thought it was a joke. I thought it was like when the tweet came out, it's like, oh, I qualified for day 2 of the MCQ with this deck. And I'm like, haha, very funny. And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, this is extremely powerful.
Well, upon first glance, as you see Brian finally taps out and gives in, the deck doesn't really make a lot of sense. But as you see the sideboarding here, the Ashioks are going to go, the Excavators are going to go, along with the Teferi. So that's 9 cards out. We got to bring 9 cards in. So 3 Veil of Summer, 2 Yawgmoth's Vile Offering, 2 Elder Spell, a Jace, and another copy of Tamiyo. How do we feel about that sideboard?
This is very innovative, in my opinion. This is getting rid of that combo. Knowing that there's Ashioks, Ken is just going mid-range. And that just shows the power of decks like this, that they have the capability of doing that. Because the deck has Tamiyos, it has Teferi Hero of Dominaries, now it has Veil of Summers, it has Elder Spells. It has Yagama's Vile Offering. We might see Ken just Teferi Ultimate BBD.
Sure. Just say, you know what, I can play mid-range better than you can play mid-range, right?
Yeah,
Is that the plan here?
It could very well be.
Well, for Brian, he's going to sideboard out some Elite Guard Mages, a couple of Ashioks, 2 Oath of Kayas, and a Tyrant Scorn. Going to bring in 2 Duress, 2 Narset, 2 Elder Spells of his own, and a Noxious Grasp. How do you feel about this from your best buddy?
Well, I am starting to just see that these players are just better than me, because now Brian is taking Ashioks out of his deck, knowing that Ken might be going down this path. This is just high-level Magic, honestly. Taking out Ashioks, the reason that he put it in the deck was for this matchup, and now he's sideboarding it out.
He's doing a little bit of hedging here. He's still got 2 to draw to.
Yeah, still have some interaction. It's very important.
Well, here's an interesting hand. I see a Watery Grave and a Drowned Catacombs along with Teferi, Tyrant Scorn, Ashiok, one of the 2 that he's left in, Narset, one of the 2 that he's brought in, and one of those copies of Duress. So this feels like a hand that you're supposed to keep. There's interaction kind of early and often, assuming you draw that 3rd land, ideally a white source for the Teferi.
Yeah, I mean, you'd much rather see that Duress be a Thought Erasure, because that Surveil is very important.
Okay.
But you have to keep hands like this. It's close, but if you hit that 3rd land, you're able to deploy some Planeswalkers. You have an interactive spell for a creature.
Ken's not liking what he sees. He's going to take a mulligan down to 5. He's going to keep these 5 cards, however. He's got to put 2 back, given that we are working underneath the London mulligan rule now here in Magic. So we'll see. It looks like Temple Garden will be 1. What do you think the other one should be that goes away?
It would be a Mox, in my opinion, or a Veil. Like, you just want to have as many lands as possible.
Okay.
But one thing interesting to note is that Duress now actually looks very good, because Ken's going to be on 5 cards, is going to probably shock to play around a Thought Erasure. That's interesting.
Ooh. Now that, wow, these are some bold cards to put to the bottom.
I just need to I need to leave and go start playtesting right now for the next Mythic Championship, because I would have never put that Teferi on the bottom.
I'm a little shocked that Teferi is going away. It's the best card in his hand. I don't know what the plan is, but he is here.
No, both these players really want to win this, and they've been playing very high level, and they both won their divisions last season. So they are 4 wins away. Ken is 1 game away from just having it 3 matches, but they have a long road to get the repeat.
Brian fires off the rest. He's going to take Veil of Summer, and now you see Ken. He'll be deploying land here in just a moment. Drew a Mox Amber for the turn. I don't think he's going to deploy another one of those, so looks like Fibblethip was the draw. We're going to head back over to Brian. Glacial Fortress is pretty big. That's the white source that he was missing, so he'll just play that and pass the turn. We head back over to Ken, who will play a Hinterland Harbor. Now there's Fibblethip. Fibblethip's going to draw a copy of, looks like, Hallowed Fountain. So back to Brian, we're going to go. Which 3-mana spell does he want to play? He's got Ashiok, Narset, and Teferi as options. Looks like he's going to fire off Tyrant Scorn for now, though, and get that Fibblethip out of here.
Yeah, that shuffles back into the library, and now Brian is able to get that Narset into play to start trying to find some action, some Planeswalkers, Volsa Citadel, anything that is just going to generate velocity.
So you know, it's one of many things that's interesting about Magic. I think about that Mythic Championship, which you got runner-up at, and how big of a role Narset was playing in that tournament and in that format. And now it's like Narset is barely playable in this standard format.
Well, it's crazy. Corsa 2020 just changed the game.
Yeah.
I mean, we even saw a deck that I loved. I loved Bant Scapeshift, and it's not really playable anymore.
Yeah, that's how
because
quickly
of the
things
Skeptic.
change,
This
right?
has changed a lot, but these decks are super powerful. And just seeing that evolution, where Narset was very good in that matchup, but against Kethis, it's not good at all.
So here's 3 mana Teferi. That's going to come down. Looks like that's going to bounce Lazav. So the Multifarious is out of here for now. Brian's going to draw a card, picked up an Oath of Kaya. Now he's going to activate Narset. Let's go a little bit deeper into the deck. Bolas's Citadel will be the selection over Duress. There's a Hallowed Fountain that are on the battlefield tapped. Now Brian's getting a little something going here. 2 Planeswalkers on the battlefield. Narset has done a nice job. The only thing that Brian's really missing right now is lands to get deeper into this game. So Lazav is going to join things here for Ken. He will surveil 1. Looks like he's going to leave Lazav on top of the, he's going to leave Kethis on top of the deck, because Lazav is now on the battlefield, perhaps.
It is tough, because if Brian's able to deal with both of these legends, then that Teferi just gets stuck in hand. So Ken might want a true 5th land, or just prepare for that.
Well, he looks to have put Kethis into the graveyard. Mox Amber might be headed towards the battlefield. Brian does know about one of these earlier from the Duress, so he'll deploy that Mox Amber. Ken's left with a Mox Amber and a Teferi Hero of Dominaria. So we head back over to BBD. That is not land number 5, Brad. That's a little frowny face for your old buddy there.
That is. And also this Othakai is not going to work against Lazav because Lazav just put Kethis in the graveyard. So if Othakai comes down to deal 3, Ken can quickly turn it into a 3-4. So that's not a play, like, because, yeah, there's not a really good decision here besides just getting rid of the current graveyard.
That is a really, really good point, as the third Planeswalker does join the battlefield. So here's Ashiok, gonna mill Ken 4 cards and then exile his graveyard. If Ken wants to respond with Lazav and turning it into Kethis, he's got to do it right now, and so he will. So now his Lazav is a 3-4. Breeding Pool is the draw, so that's land number 5 if he wants to play Teferi without using Mox Amber.
Yeah, now Teferi is going to come down. It's actually just mana reduction because of the Lazav becoming
Very good call.
Kethis,
Yeah.
as well as that. So any technical 2 to 3 drop, if it's a legendary, can be cast now. And now that's going to take care of the Narset, so Teferi can tick up and draw a card.
This is a nice little turn here that Ken Yukuhiro is building. Narset down, Teferi can come onto the battlefield. Ken just deciding exactly how he wants to tap for it to maximize the number of cards he can draw and play after drawing a card with a Teferi, which is only going to cost 4 mana, as you mentioned. So there's a lot of subtle, small things that add up here in this kind of matchup, especially on Ken's side of things, because this deck is fairly complicated. So he'll draw a card. He'll, of course, be untapping 2 lands at the end of things once it's all said and done.
So this isn't the worst for BBD, though, since Ken's going to be passing the turn. Brian does have the option to Elder Spell Ken's Teferi and then bounce the Kethis and then exile Teferi from the graveyard.
That's not bad.
It's not a bad turn. It's not great, but it's definitely going to stop what Ken's been doing.
There is the Elder Spell. Brian is hovering over it. He's thinking about using it, and he will use it. He's going to submit 1 here, so we'll see where things are going to be headed. It's going to be onto the Teferi, so now let's do a little bounce action here. Get this Kethis, Lazav hybrid out of here. Thought Eraser, the draw.
Oof.
Unfortunately for Brian, no access to black mana here with Glacial Fortress and Hallowed Fountain untapped. That's the first place my mind went. So not going to get the opportunity to cast the discard spell, which means Lazav will rear its ugly head once again on this game. And there is the Multifarious. Trigger, little Surveil action here. Tameo is the top card here for Ken. Seems like a keeper, though Ashiok will take care of it if it does stay on top.
Yeah, but if you just mill it, that'll just get you closer to a true mill, so you might as well keep it up and get it milled from that Ashiok.
So now that Brian's drawn land number 5, he's going to plus his Teferi. He's going to use his Ashiok. Let's get these cards out of here. My question to you is, it feels like Brian's doing pretty good here, yeah?
Brian is in the driver's seat in this game. Yeah, Ken has drawn multiple legends now that aren't going to work, flooded a little bit, and this is what happens. If Ken is not deploying a powerful strategy every turn with this mid-range build, Brian's going to pick that apart. Brian's deck is a mid-range deck, so Ken definitely needs to do extremely powerful things now that he doesn't really have the combo ability.
This game, Brian can do what we talked about last game, which was 5 mana Teferi, play it, draw a card, untap 2 lands, plus Teferi, take a card out of your hand. He took an extraneous copy of Lazav, and I think that Ken is going to scoop it up because he's facing down 3 Planeswalkers. That's just too much, and BBD gets the W. So we're all tied up here 1-1, and Brian is going to move out a hero and elite guard mage in an Ashiok and an Oath of Kaya. Anything to note about those changes?
I like this, or I can at least buy it since Hero sometimes on turn 2 is just going to get bounced by Teferi Time Raveler, and that's just kind of a waste of an entire turn. So I can see just being more interactive on the draw, especially since he did get to see many cards. Now, we were commentating quickly, the game was going fast, but both players were able to see a lot of each other's deck. Yeah. And so Brian is going to take that into account.
Well, Ken's not going to change anything. Brian's just going to work with that, and he's going to move forward. So Brian's got a hand of Teferi, so big T and little t, along with Oath of Kaya and 3 lands, checking to see if there is a shock land there. There are 2 of them, actually. And now Ashiok is the draw step. So, you know, he's got a little bit of interaction. He's got Ashiok, which you assume is an MVP in the matchup, even though he's boarded down a few of them. And then he's got 3 mana Teferi and 5 mana Teferi. The only thing he needs to really kind of plug the gap here is some sort of 2 mana spell, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, but since Ken's not coming out of the gates, Brian's going to be able to interact with whatever Ken's third turn is. Now, if there was a Veil of Summer, that would just be a blowout with that Mox.
Ooh, that would be nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah, here is Teferi, Time Raveler. So Ken is first to the battlefield with a Planeswalker. That Teferi will maybe go. Okay, it's going to go up to 5.
I like it going up here because it gets into Oath range, and next turn it can go down. If Ken finds an untapped land, that's Teferi in play. So I do like that play.
Here's Teferi, Time Raveler for Brian. So now he will plus as well. So both players have a Teferi on 5. You mentioned that Ken needs an untapped land to be able to deploy 5 mana Teferi via the Mox, but that is not there right now. So here is a Mox Amber. I suppose we could see Ken. Actually, no, he can deploy it, right? You play the Mox, you bounce the Mox,
Yes.
you replay it. That's a cute little interaction there by Mr. Yukuhiro. So we are going to see a 5 mana Teferi ahead of schedule, it appears. Boy, that is nasty.
It is. And so now we're seeing that, but Brian again has one of those 2 Elder spells to be able to just clean up the Planeswalkers in play. And Ken is being prepared for this, definitely saying, if there is an Elder spell, I do not want Brian to get any more value out of it.
Temple of Silence is how Ken is going to follow what looks to be a pretty darn good turn. So if you are Brian, you're going to draw a Godless Shrine. You've got an Isolated Chapel as well. Elder Spell would be a pretty good place to go, taking care of 2 Planeswalkers, though you don't get to add any loyalty to any of yours. You could also make an argument for this play, which is Oath of Kaya taking care of 5 mana Teferi if you wanted to.
I like this a little bit more. Ken hasn't deployed many threats. There's also not a lot of threats for that Oath of Kaya to just deal with. So saving that Elder Spell, that can come in handy when games get really out of control with Tamios and other Teferis. Like, we can see Ken having 3 or 4 Planeswalkers in play.
Ken's side of things right now, he has another spell of his own, a Fibblethip in hand, a Zav, a Jace, and then that Kethis, the hidden hand, all hanging out, and mana to do most of it. So I'm curious to see how he wants to move forward on this turn. Things are starting to get complicated in this combo versus mid-range matchup, though this has become much more mid-range on mid-range once we get to the sideboarded games.
Yeah, that's just showing the power of decks like this. Like, just being able to, I mean, it's not proven that Ken's build can grind with a true mid-range deck. We're just speculating on it. But if Ken's doing it, I have faith in it. I have faith that it's at least been tried.
That's my assumption too, right? Like the way that he sideboarded with which was moving the combo out means that he wants to go mid-rangey with Brian. Now, I don't know how wise that is. You know, this might be, well, I'll say this. Brian kind of predicted that happening with how he sideboarded by taking out 2 Ashiok. So maybe he's got one up on the situation and Ken's thinking, well, I need to maybe play the game the way that he wants to, but play it better than him. Because Brian, with how he sideboarded, which surprised you for sure, which was, how about a couple Ashioks out so I'm not so reliant on trying to break up the combo? He might not even care about that anymore.
Yeah, I love it. And you know, Brian had some time to figure out how to sideboard, and Decklist are known, so you definitely don't want to just be pure anti-combo when Ken has such an anti-mid-range sideboard.
Yes, he does. There's the Bowls of Citadels, the draw step. Will we get to see one of these wild Bowls of Citadel turns in this game that Brad has talked about? He's done some foreshadowing. I hope we get to see it at some point.
Well, that's why I'm here. I came for the big Bowl of Citadel turns.
Brian's got 23 life. He's got plenty to work with. Kethis and Lazav have joined the battlefield here for Ken before he passed the turn back. So you saw the Bowls of Citadels, the draw step, and now Brian's going to go into the tank. Brian, not the slowest player, but when it is time to really think about a decision, he takes some time to think it through.
Especially on a turn like this, there's so many options. There's playing Teferi, Time Raveler, Hero of Dominaria, or Ashiok, along with double spelling those 3 mana Planeswalkers with that Elder spell. You also want to make sure you get to that 6 mana on time for that Bowl of Citadel. You don't want to bleed from these creatures in play for too long.
Here is 5 mana Teferi. Brian's going to draw a card, which means he'll be untapping 2 lands here in just a moment. Perhaps the thought process is here is, I need to find a 6th land to be able to go nuts a Bowls of Citadel, and this gives me perhaps the best chance to do so. So, we're going to head back over to Ken, which means he's got an active Kethis. Doesn't have the biggest graveyard right now. And how crazy can he go? But we got to remember that he has kind of gone out of the combo.
Well, this Ken can go quite crazy, right? Or I guess that Teferi is on 3 now. If that Teferi was on 4, isn't that just a Jace Ultimate? Jace comes in with 4, correct?
Wow, if memory serves, that's correct.
I might be wrong here, but it can happen because that that Mox needs to be bounced as it needs.
He's a blue source of mana. Yeah, he's short on 1 blue source of mana. Hey, this is some of the trade-off of playing a 4-color deck, right? It's not just free to be able to do that. You've got temples in there. Some of them, you know, those are obviously going to enter the battlefield tap. Sometimes your lands enter the battlefield tap when you don't want them to. And in this instance, your mana isn't perfect because deploying this Jace does not appear to be possible. So it looks like we're going to move towards the Elder spell here for Ken, which makes some sense because he does have a backup copy.
Yeah, I think we might see this happening and that Jace getting deployed.
Okay.
And this is just making sure that Teferi stays in play when that Mox gets bounced. But then we have an Elder Spell on the other side.
Tricky Ken Yukuhiro. Second time he's bounced a Mox this game. Glacial Fortress is the draw, which means now he also has a land drop to make. And we can't forget that legendaries are going to cost 1 less with Kethis on the battlefield. So that means that Fibblethip could potentially also be deployed here. This is a pretty nice turn. Remember, Ken hasn't played the land yet, so here's the Jace.
And this is exactly what Ken has to do. Just keep that board position as high as possible and just keep generating card advantage. And this is exactly what Ken needs to be doing to win these games.
Ken took a quick look at his graveyard with Kethis to see if there was anything he could rebuy. He said, no, there's nothing great going on there. So there's Fibblethip, multiple copies of Tameo in hand along with the Elder Spell, and we can't forget about some attacks that need to take place. So Brian's going to take 4 points of damage. He's going to fall down to 19, and we head back his way. Duress is the draw. It's an okay draw, not the best we've ever seen. I'm sure he probably wanted 6 land to go nuts with Bolas' Citadel, but we're not there yet.
Yeah, we're probably going to see Brian decide between one of the 2 Planeswalkers and then Elder Spell. And just like you said, that's not where you want to be. And each turn, Brian's life total goes lower for this Bolas' Citadel.
It's what Brian has been kind of setting up this entire game. So here is Teferi Time Raveler. We'll see what comes next here for Brian. How does he want to use this Teferi? Does he want to maybe bounce something and then Elder Spell onto it?
Yeah, I like that, just getting creatures off of the board and putting more pressure on a high loyalty Teferi, which will keep Brian's life total high for that Bolas' Citadel if it does come down. But it does seem like that Elder Spell has to be cast sooner than later.
That I think I agree with. I don't think you can let these Planeswalkers hang around any longer. So it looks like Brian is going to bounce the Kethis. That'll go back over to Ken's hand. There's a Hero of Precinct 1. Don't think that changes Brian's decision at all. I still think it's probably Elder Spell.
I believe so. I think it's a little late to the party, especially with Ken just drawing so many cards. It feels like that Hero's just going to untap and not have any relevancy on the game for the next couple turns.
Though Brian might be thinking Duress here instead of Elder Spell. That's a little bit interesting. Maybe he's thinking Hero defend his Planeswalker.
You know, from now on, if Hero's in Brian's hand, I'm just going to say he's probably going to cast it.
Brian is the Esper Hero. He's the hero of Precinct 1. He wants to deploy his creature that has dealt him so much damage over the course of 2019, but it is hard not to cast that Elder Spell right now. Maybe Brian's thought process is, I could squeeze out another card. Oh my goodness, he's gonna try to squeeze out another card, okay. I didn't know your friend was so greedy.
Well, sometimes you have to be. We're not in the greatest position. And so Ken now has a lot of decisions, right? Because Ken has access to effectively seven mana, and that Kethis can be a mana reduction, and Tamio is going to be very nice. So I guess we'll see what Ken's going to do with that Jace. Or no, the Jace was already used. It was not.
I don't believe the Jace has been used yet this turn. I think Ken just drew his card. Now he's just waiting it out and figuring out exactly what he wants to do on this turn, because there are a lot of decisions. You mentioned Tamio being in hand. There are 2 copies of that. There's Kethis in hand that Brian knows about. Ken knows, Brian knows. We all know. And then there's that copy of the Elder Spell in hand, and if he wants to deploy that or not. Ken will take a look at his graveyard. He's assessing everything. This is what the great ones do, right? They're going to assess every aspect of things, even if they know how to play the deck well.
This is not what I want to see, but we are going to see a Jace Ultimate. Now this is, I believe, draw 7? Draw 8?
This is draw 7. Then if your library has no cards in it, you win the game. So that is a draw 7.
And usually in mid-range mirrors, when your library still has cards in it, you still win the game.
You oftentimes do. However, what's interesting about this is that Jace Ultimate now has resolved, and Ken's got even more options to pour over, is if Brian draws another land for this Bolas' Citadel, he could draw, in theory, 7 cards with a Bolas Citadel turn, right?
You can win the game.
Right? You can just, this game could just end if he draws another land. So here's a Mox Amber.
So, I mean, I think that Teferi could come down and just bounce the hero, though the hero in play is super important for that Bolsa Citadel. And then you still have to chain cards like Teferi, Time Raveler, and Elite Guard Mage, and these things do have to happen.
But they could happen.
I mean, I have faith. Okay, that's
Tamio.
Cedric.
Brad.
Cedric, this might be happening. I mean, we have a lot of things that have to happen next turn. There's a lot of faith going into Brian's turn.
Well, step 1 is draw land 6.
Well, there's like 18 steps.
Well, we got one at a time.
Yeah.
Baby steps. Baby step is draw land 6 for BBD.
I am looking forward to step 15 of activated Bolsa Citadel, though.
We do not know how this one ends. They don't tell us the results ahead of time. We don't know if he's going to draw that 6th land. If you're Brad, he's certainly hoping that Brian does. If you're Ken, you are really hoping that Brian does not. Ken's got a full hand. You have to imagine if he gets to take another turn, it's going to be a sizable advantage for him. Kethis will get activated here. He's going to exile 2 legendaries, and that means a couple copies of Mox Amber are going to join the battlefield here to be able to cast something additional.
If we were already on 17 steps for Brian, what step are we on for Ken's
I
turn?
have no idea. He is deep into it here. You thought drawing 7 cards was going to be good. Now here's Teferi.
The Teferi is going to happen, and that's probably going to bounce that hero.
And it will. Ken identifying that play. Again, that Teferi only costs 2 mana because of the Kethis that's on the battlefield. Boy, oh boy, oh boy.
This is a lot of cards.
That's a lot to try to overcome that Ken has going on in his hand. Brian does not draw land number 6.
Step
just
1 was a
Teferi.
strike.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I don't... I wish there was a way for Brian to get out of this, but I can't see it personally. There's just too many things happening. I mean, Brian has the same amount of cards in hand as Ken, yet half the permanents in play.
That's a bit of an issue, I would argue. Here's the tough thing, too, is that Brian does still have that Elder Spell, but Elder Spelling away all of these permanents isn't even that good because Kethis can just bring them all back, right?
Yeah, except he might take an aggressive and hope that Ken's hand has nothing and maybe just Ashiok, Elder Spell onto Ashiok, and then get rid of that graveyard. That'll get rid of 2 Moxes.
Okay.
That's step 1. No.
Okay. Well, let's go back to the steps. We missed the first step. New plan.
New plan.
Here's Ashiok.
There's an Ashiok. It's going to be comboed with the Elder Spell.
Okay, so now Elder Spell is going to take care of these Planeswalkers. Then you minus the Ashiok. You mill Ken for 4 cards. You take care of his graveyard, which takes care of those Planeswalkers that just died and those Moxes that are down
Yeah,
there,
those
right?
pesky Moxes can just generate so much card advantage. Now, what does Ken really have in hand? Can redeploy the 2 Planeswalkers and a Fibble Flip.
Okay.
But those 2 Kethis and are extra, but it's still just, it's so much.
I mean, it's a lot
so
of
much
advantage.
Cedric.
It's a lot of advantage because these cards are also a little bit cheaper. But how much realistically is it, is the question. Because Brian's still sitting at 19. I have to imagine, so let me ask you this, Brad, as Ken's going to think through his turn. Like, if you're Ken, where are you sending those creatures? You going after Brian's life total, or are you going to try to wear down that Ashiok? Because we know Brian wants a lot of life.
If I was Ken, I'd just ultimate a Jace again.
Here's Teferi. It's only going to cost 2.
Yeah, gonna bounce that Mox.
That interaction's a little much. Just gonna put that out there.
I'm pretty confident that every interaction with the Fairy Time Raveler is a little much.
Here is Mox Amber again. It means that the Teferi cost 1. Come on. Andrew a card.
We have a Teferi Hero of Dominaria Ultimate on the table now too. This is rough. If my good friend goes out already, do I have to stay for the next match?
You do have to stay for the next match.
All right.
I know we're asking a lot having you do 2, but yeah, you're going to have to do 2. And given how excited you were on Twitter, you're doing 2.
All right. I am excited. This is brutal, yeah. Just the fact that we're seeing the Kethis combo deck, Teferi Ultimate, the Teferi control deck. You know, like just the concept of that is just mind-blowing to me. We've seen Esper decks do this often. I mean, when is Esper the underdog? You know, like,
It's rare.
Yeah,
It's very rare, but this is the situation we live in, is now Brian's going to fall down to 14. Look, it's got to be a land here. It's a Hero Precinct 1, folks. And he really needed a 6th land to be able to do really anything of consequence. Brian didn't find it, and now I'm even having difficulty now finding a way for him to get out of this. I just don't know where he's even supposed to begin. It's going to be a Hero of Precinct 1. This would be one hell of a game to win. I'll say that. As now here's Teferi Time Raveler. Make a token, probably bounce something.
Hit a land duress. I mean, that's just it. Like, we know that Ken is going to take an incredible turn next turn, triggering that emblem many times. But when, I mean, it's still a free roll for Brian, right? Like, Brian loses no value of just finishing this game.
Yep.
So play it out, see what happens.
Maybe something can go wrong on Ken's side of things. Brian did not draw land once again. He bounced the Oath of Kaya, picked up a Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, and speaking of the 5-mana Planeswalker, his emblem is now triggering, so goodbye land. If we were far away from Bolas' Citadel before, we're almost certainly not casting it now. Here is Fibblethip. There will be a trigger for the Teferi emblem because a card is being drawn.
All right, Brian is tapping.
Ken Yukuhiro is going to win this game and match over Brian Braun-Duin, which means that Ken is going to move on to play Lee, and Brian, unfortunately, is done.
Congratulations to Ken. An impressive win there and very impressive sideboarding. It was so next level of knowing exactly what your opponent might have sideboarded in or out. And just beyond my comprehension at some point.
It was beyond my comprehension. I did not expect that from both players. I didn't know how Ken was going to sideboard. I knew that there was many options, but just seeing both players were kind of in line with each other. Now, Brian maybe shouldn't have brought that third Atchak in, but there's still a lot of graveyard interaction, especially with cards like Yawgmoth's File Offering that can just be repeatedly used with Kethis. It gets tough if there is still a graveyard in play. So I see why Brian brought a third one in on the draw, but never really got off the ground. That's the struggle of the Esper deck, is trying to interact while deploying lands while getting card advantage.
It's just kind of all got to happen at once, right?
Yeah.
And that was a game where Narset kind of did its thing a little bit, Teferi did its thing a little bit. So Brian looked like he was doing pretty well. He even had some copies of the Elder Spell, but ultimately, you know, that deck again can just do things from such a low base. That Kethis deck, and all of a sudden you were firing off ultimates in combination with the Elder Spell, and Brian couldn't keep up.
Oh, absolutely. It was a very impressive win, and we do have an interview with Ken Yukuhiro with Paul Chian.
All right, hello. I am joined here by the winner of the lower semifinals. I'm here with Ken Yukuhiro. Congratulations on that win.
Yeah, thank you.
So, I mean, that was a ridiculous game. The Elder Spell was just so phenomenal. I mean, you know, do you think that's one of the important cards in the matchup?
そうですね。サイドボード後は、コントロールに対して、テフェリーの奥義をエルダースペルから打つというプランは、想定していたものなので、これは一つのゲームプランの僕の想定したゲームプランになります。はい。
And we got to see you use that plan. I mean, not only Teferi, I don't think that I've ever seen this before. You got to use Jace and then use the ultimate on Jace to draw 7 cards. That was incredible.
そうですね。あれのおかげで手札がかなり良くなったんで、テフェリーの奥義までつながったんで、それも良かった。エルダースペルはすごく活躍してくれて良かったと思います。はい。
So going into this match, were you a little bit concerned about your matchup with Brian because he brought a different deck when everybody else chose to bring the Kethis combo deck?
そうですね。僕が、今回想定していたデッキが、エスパーコントロールとエスパーヒーローと、ケシスコンボとレクサスの4つだったんですね。でそれだけに勝とうとしてきた準備があったので、余計なカードをもうサイドボード、メインボードも入れてないので、その分で差がついたんじゃないかなと思います。はい。
Okay, well, you have another match coming up, and now you're only going to be seeing Kethis mirrors. Now, do you think your build of Kethis combo is favored against the other Kethis decks that you're going to see? You're going to be playing against Li Shitian in the next round. Do you think your build has an edge in the matchup? そうですね。リーシータウンは、メインボードもサイドボードも基本地形が入ってないので、サイドボードからの、アサシンズトロフィーで相手の土地を破壊して、相手を機能不全にさせるっていうのが一つのプランなんで、それが皆さんに見せられたらいいなと思います。はい。 You know, I literally figured out what you were saying because I heard Assassin's Trophy.
That's right.
And I saw his deck list and he didn't have the basic lands. Matt Nass has the basic land in his sideboard, so you're not going to be able to get the lands there. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, well, I know you have your next match to get to. Congratulations and best of luck in your next match against Li Shitian.
Paul didn't need the translator on that last one when he heard Assassin's Trophy, which is, would you say, the most important in the matchup as well?
It's going to be a good tactic. We saw this even last season with the 4-color Dreadhorde decks. The evolution was play a greedy mana base. There's no Field of Ruins or Assassin's Trophy, so then they started playing those cards, and we're seeing that happen again, and that's what I really like about Ken Yukihiro's list, but Matt was prepared for that in the finals now. So I do think that that's going to be a huge edge in this next match, but we'll see.
And we can't forget, too, you throw an Assassin Trophy and the fact that Ken's got all these main deck copies of Ashiok.
Yeah.
Right, where Lee does not. So, I'm actually stepping out, so I'm going to make a prediction, deal with it. I mean, look, I think things are looking pretty good here for Ken, given how his deck is built for Game 1 and the sideboarded game.
Okay, fair enough. And we'll see if in the grand finals that one swamp that's in Matt's sideboard ends up making a difference. Who would think just one little swamp?
One swamp in 2 matches might make a difference, too.
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay.
We'll see.
But,
We're not even close to there yet, so who
yeah,
knows?
we got a ways to go before we make it. And we're doing something very fun right now that we haven't done before because we didn't have the Throne of Eldraine coming out before. So we're going to take a look at some cards that have already been previewed, but we haven't gotten a chance on this show to talk about our feelings about them. So this is the new adventure cards, a new mechanic. What do you two think about these 3 cards and adventuring in general?
So I love the adventure mechanic. I didn't actually understand it. I had to look it up when I saw these cards at first. But so what happens is when you cast the sorcery side, you can exile the card and then cast the creature side. And these are great mechanics in Magic in general, just being able to use a lot of your mana, or if you only can use half of it, if times get risky and you just need to get, like, for say, a 2/2 flyer into play as soon as you can. So I'm a big fan of these effects. I love the flavor of them as well. Just the fact that you go on an adventure.
That was the thing I was going to mention is, these cards are they're going to range from being totally fine to some of them be very, very good, depending on what the format looks like. A card like Love Struck Beast could be really good. It's just a 3-mana 5/5 that can very easily attack. But the thing I love about these is the flavor. Whoever pitched this idea to have it basically read like a book or like a novel or something like that and calling these adventures, it's really, really, really innovative and cool. I'm excited to see these cards in action, but I'm also excited as we work our way more through preview season what the next ones are going to be, because we've already got some really cool ones.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're very reminiscent of certain Grimm's fairy tales, which I find beautiful and very entertaining. Gives me the mystical heebie-jeebies. I love the world that's created. And Oko is a brand new planeswalker. Is that right?
That is right. Brand new planeswalker.
Kind of a Puck Shakespearean type of fairy.
Ish. I'm not great on the flavor and the Vorthos of Magic, but there are some things about it that I really do like, and they're really leaning into it now, which I absolutely adore. With the trailer that they had for Throne of Eldraine and the stories and the adventures and all of this stuff. So Oko, I'm sure, has a story and the food and everything that's going on there, but can we take a look at the big guy in the middle with the axe? Garrick is back. I am pumped. Garrick died at some point in Magic, right? I don't know.
No. Liliana, I don't know much about the lore, but Liliana cursed Garrick.
Okay.
And Garrick's been chased Lily for a while, and I don't know what Garrick's been up to myself, but Garrick has been my favorite planeswalker, was there in the original 5. I've always loved playing Golgari decks, and I am excited to play with this card.
Oko reminds me a little bit of Nissa's powerful abilities, but you do, instead of turning your lands into creatures, you create food and then turn that food into 3/3 creatures. Of course, they don't have the haste, but do you think we're going to see this card?
Any 3-mana planeswalker is in play, especially if it's green. Now, I don't think we're going to see any 1-mana accelerants like Llanowar Elves or Elvish Mystic in this set, because then Oko would probably be a little bit too powerful. But it's a unique card. It's 3 mana. It is across 2 colors, so there's a little bit of barrier to entry as far as deck building is concerned. But I'll say this: I hope we do, because that card's really cool.
Yeah,
for many years, I haven't thought that many Simic cards see enough play. But lately, they've been really pushing them. And I don't know what the food mechanic's going to be like, right? But it does seem powerful.
Well, I know some of the other cards, which we may take a look at later, turn other artifacts into things, and food is an artifact, so the creation of food may be turned into artifacts that are used for different purposes. I think it's going to be a really interesting mechanic to watch.
I think it should be.
All right. Well, when we come back, we're going to have Alias back at the desk, and we're going to have more matches for you, the finals with Li Shitian and Ken Yukuhiro. So stay tuned right after this break.